Hello and great to have you back on my channel where I talk about all things personal finance. This channel has reached 100 subscribers last week and I want to thank you guys for this. I'm happy that you get some value out of what I'm doing here. To get this small community started, I created a Telegram group called Sam's Clubhouse. If you maybe have further questions about personal finance in Germany, enjoy finance memes, or just seek like-minded people, then feel free to join either by scanning this QR code or by clicking the link in the video description. I also plan on going live there from time to time, so if you want to talk about a specific topic, this interactive voice chat is the best option, in my opinion. So I would be happy to welcome you in the Telegram group, and now let's get into today's video where I present to you all current positions in my portfolio. Now I have to say that this is not investment advice, obviously, so do your own research and remember that personal responsibility is always key. Also, this is definitely no role model portfolio. In fact, I'm in a true mess right now and in the middle of a restructuring, but here you go. Number one, Vanguard All World ETF, the distributing version, sorry there. So it's not the accumulating one, but the distributing one. That's my true base investment. Yeah, it's globally diversified. It's got developed markets and emerging markets in it. So that's what it makes it for me my perfect base investment. It's very broad. And there also goes my conviction score. That's my subjective perception of how confident I am in every position I'm presenting to you, and that's got a 5 because it's just very basic, and I think it's good for everyone to have a solid base, a widely diversified base. Moving on to number 2, and that's the Fidelity US Quality Income ETF, the distributing version as well. In my last video about my favorite ETF for passive income, I talked about the Fidelity Quality Income ETFs, and obviously this is not the one I majorly talked about, but I'm thinking about changing to the Fidelity Global Quality Income ETF. It's got a 2.5%-ish dividend yield, and it's not losing out on total performance. If you want to know more about that, I suggest you watch my last video about the Fidelity Quality Income ETFs. Then is the iShares Dow Jones Asia Pacific Select Dividend 50 distributing ETFs. It's a very old ETF from my early days. I bought it back then for a high yield. I was only looking at the high yield, is exactly that what I described in the Fidelity and Income ETF video. So you shouldn't just look at the high yield because then the price dropped and also the payout shrank. So I'm keeping that for now, for reasons of diversification, and but I will probably sell it when it has slightly recovered, because obviously it's focused on Asia Pacific, and those regions in terms of natural resources were hit pretty hard. So it's mostly Australia and some other Asian companies. So I guess in midterm they will recover, and then I'm planning on selling this ETF. Moving on to the iShares Core S&P 500 distributing ETF. So I think most or actually all of my ETFs are distributing. This is my ETF for overweighting the US as a general market. I know that in the last 10 or 20 years, the US has outperformed globally. But I think this might continue for some more years. It's a very free market. And I think therefore it's likely to continue. And that's my basic ETF for exactly that. Another basic ETF is the iShares Nasdaq 100 distributing ETF, but here distributing really doesn't mean much, because I think this is actually ETF where the the yield is smaller than the total expense ratio. So I'm only taking the distributing version here because it's much cheaper. And I think the distributing version, the not distributing version, sorry, is like 500 euros a piece. And yeah, of course, that's my basic technology ETF. Then moving on to the first individual company, that's 3M, and 3M produces all sorts of things, from scotch tape to face masks to highway markings. I made a video about 3M. If you're interested, check it out. Next is BASF, a German chemical company and actually the largest chemical producer in the world. It produces chemicals for plastics, colors, maybe you know styropor. It's an EPS foam, pretty well known, insulating material. It's also a very old position, not too high of a conviction, although when I look at that now, I would probably give it a 3 and not just a 2. So obviously, to explain the conviction score quickly, 1 is a very low conviction and 5 is a very high conviction. So we are on a 2 or a 3 here for BASF, yeah. And of course, I think you already know that this is all focused on dividend companies so far. Then after BASF, we have another old giant, GE, General Electric. I bought General Electric as a watch list position, so a very tiny position, as you can see. But honestly, I don't really know how the business has developed until now, and yeah, that's why there is no conviction score, because I just don't know what's going on. But the position is also very tiny. So then, coming from the American GE, that's basically the German GE, Siemens. They produce all kinds of electronics for power plants, for trains, for traffic lights, for appliances. And they recently, or they are in the process of spinning off into multiple subsidiaries. One of them is Siemens Energy, that was only spun off last year, and that's why I got it, and that's why it's at such a tiny position, and that's why I have no real conviction score on that, because I really don't know about this company. Then there's another spin-off called Siemens Healthineers. Now that was spun off about 5 years ago already, and they create medical machines for labs and hospitals, and for example MRT machines. Next up, staying in the medical field, is Fresenius, a German healthcare company that also operates a lot of hospitals. I am no medical field expert, and I really don't like this sector because I find it also difficult to assess. And that's why I bought Fresenius some time ago, because they are partially in this medical field and partially just operating hospitals. So I thought that was maybe a good call, but yeah, obviously every medical company, if you're not developing vaccines, you are dealing with a lot of problems right now in terms of COVID, because major or not so urgent operations are halted, and that's what you normally make money on, and yeah, that's the problem right now. Then next up is Stabilis, a German automotive supplier that produces mostly gas springs. Pretty old buy. I have a personal connection to this company because I did an internship there, and that's the whole backstory. Then we have Fraport, a German airport company. I bought it actually in early 2020, which was obviously pretty ironic, because after that, or just a few weeks after that, the whole air travel industry went down south, and still mostly is until today, and they probably also will be for quite some time. Yeah, I bought Fraport as an airport company because I did not want an airline or plane manufacturer, but I wanted to get exposure into the air travel industry. So I'm keeping it, and I'm probably increasing it if I can see that this whole crisis is getting to an end and air travel is picking up again. Then we have Texas Instruments, American technology or semiconductor company. I think everyone knows them for their calculators from school, but they also do a lot of other high-tech things. And but yeah, and that's exactly the point. Other than that, I don't really know what they do, so I have to look into this. I'm maybe also thinking about doing a video about this, so that's why my conviction is not so high, even though the company has done pretty well. Speaking of companies doing pretty well, next up is John Deere. It's an agricultural, construction, forestry, and not to forget road building machines company. They had a really good run in the last year. And back then when I bought it, I was thinking about should I buy a Cat, so Caterpillar, or John Deere, and I went for John Deere because Cat has this big mining machine business, and I think mining is kind of old economy-ish, and obviously John Deere also has a few construction machines, but they have more this agricultural focus, and that's what I liked. And I also like the road building machines that are pretty new to the portfolio. And I also made a video about John Deere if you're interested to hear more about them. Then we have Raytheon Technologies. That's a aerospace and defense company now that was merged with United Technologies and spun off Otis Worldwide and Carrier Global in 2019. So I actually never bought this company. It's just because they merged, and that's why there's no conviction score again. That's again something I have to look into. So then we already talked about Otis. I already mentioned that it's a spin-off from United Technology, an elevator company. Yeah, that's all I gotta say about them. Then Carrier Global was another spin-off. They produce commercial refrigeration systems for retail stores, but also for privately for private use air conditioning equipment. Yeah, I guess you have seen their logo already a couple of times. And speaking of logos, this is Coca-Cola. I think there's not much to say about Coca-Cola, probably the best known brand in the world. Obviously, some people go for Pepsi and some people go for Coke, no matter if it's a stock or the drink. I am going for Coke because I don't. The reason why most people go for Pepsi in terms of stock is that they not only have a huge drinks business, but also this snacking business, which Coca-Cola doesn't have. But I don't like Pepsi's snacks, and that's why I went for Coke. And I obviously like Coke. And instead, for the snack business, I went for Mondelez International. So that's Coke plus Mondelez is my Pepsi, if you want like that. Mondelez owns lots of brands, including Milka Chocolate, Oreo, and Cadbury. I made a video about them as well. Check it out. Then, pretty similar to Mondelez, is the British company Unilever, but it's not so much focused on sweets, but it's got a broader focus on, for example, one brand would be Langnese ice cream, or Knorr soups, or hygiene products, and detergents. Yeah. Then we got McDonald's, and sometimes I like their food, and then I like their stock, and sometimes I don't. So I kind of always decide between Coke and McDonald's, and I then always go for Coke. Because sometimes I'm grateful for this McDonald's restaurant in some foreign country, but then sometimes I visit McDonald's store here, and then Then I'm thinking to myself, what did I just eat? And then I'm a little bit disappointed. So I'm not too sure about that. Then AT&T, it's the world's largest telecommunication company. It's a kind of old giant. It's missed a lot of this digitalization and is still profiting from their old business. And yeah, but they have to make their next move in order to stay ahead of the game or to stay in the game. Speaking of companies trying to stay in the game, is another dinosaur, Eni, Italian oil and gas company, very old stock that I bought when the shift to green energy was not that obvious yet, and very low now. The price is very low now, obviously of the stock and of oil. I think all companies might slightly recover midterm, and I'm definitely selling this stock then. But right now, I don't really think it makes a lot of sense to sell it because I don't even think it can go down much further. Then we have REIT, Realty Income, most probably the well-known, the best-known REIT. A REIT stands for Real Estate Investment Trust, so it's not a typical company, but a investment trust. They rent out business properties to retail stores like Walmart or Home Depot, so in the US, but they recently started to expand to the UK as well. And I really like this. They are also called the monthly dividend company, so they pay out dividends monthly, just like others pay rent. You receive rental income from them because they receive rental income from Walmart. And yeah, it's a really great concept. Then we have another REIT, which is Store Capital. It's basically very similar to Realty Income, and I wanted another REIT, that's why I got it. Store Capital has lower quality tenants compared to Realty Income, but obviously therefore goes a high risk. But they also have a high yield, otherwise pretty similar to Realty Income. Next we have HP Inc. So I'm stressing this Inc. because HP split into the Inc. and HP Enterprise some years ago. So Inc., this company right here, is laptops, printers, and so on. And Enterprise, HP Enterprise, covers the servers part. Next up, we have Western Digital. I bought Western Digital because I saw that there is basically a duopoly in terms of hard drive producers. So there's only Western Digital and Seagate in the world, and basically no other company that produces high numbers of any hard drive or solid SSDs. Yeah. Then we have Qualcomm, probably a little bit similar to Texas Instruments. I bought it quite a long time ago, and it's not a huge position, unfortunately, because it went pretty well, but I'm thinking about starting a savings plan for Qualcomm because they're also into this 5G and so on. And they pay a nice dividend as well, even though they're a pretty high-tech company. Then we have Facebook. And I'm not a fan of Facebook. I'm not a fan of Facebook. I'm not a fan of Mark Zuckerberg. I'm not a fan of Instagram. I'm not a fan of, what else do I have? I don't know. I use WhatsApp. I wouldn't say I'm a fan of WhatsApp, but I'm also not really disliking it. There's just no way around WhatsApp, I think, currently. But I don't really necessarily like their products, and the only reason I bought their stock was I like the idea of Libra, their stablecoin cryptocurrency, and I thought they could maybe tackle companies like PayPal with that, because that would make it possible for you to send small amounts for no fees instantly on WhatsApp, on Facebook Messenger, or on Instagram. And that's something we really don't have. We can do that with PayPal if you're living in the same country and if we use the same currency. But as soon as we have to cross borders, then PayPal charges high fees, and it's quite complicated. And yeah, I really like this idea of having something like PayPal in your just WhatsApp Messenger. But I still like this idea, but I basically, as you might have guessed, I dislike everything else about Facebook. And so I thought I'm probably going to sell Facebook and probably instead buy more Alphabet. It's a very new position in my portfolio. I started buying Alphabet. So Alphabet, if you don't know, it's the parent company of Google. And obviously I'm in for YouTube, where you're seeing this video on, Google Podcast, Gmail, Google Maps. And I think that's something everyone pretty much uses every day. And they're great products in my mind. And I want to get behind that. And that's why I'm pretty sure that I'm starting a savings plan on them. Then we have another, somehow old, somehow new economy company, Walt Disney. Of course, they have their parks and their ships. So this is the old business, but they have their streaming service. And that's what makes them kind of a Netflix-ish for kids. Although I can't really talk about their streaming service because I haven't used it, which I probably should try to. That's why it says no clue. So I know what they're doing. They have this entertainment business, but they also have this technology part. So let's see what's gonna happen with Disney. Definitely not a bad company, but pretty high value currently. Then we have NIO. NIO is just another company like GE that I bought for as a watch list stock. So but then I know the size here says tiny, but then NIO went to the moon and now it's a medium-sized position. Unfortunately, it was tiny in the beginning and not medium. As I said in a few videos before, I'm behind this move to electric mobility and also green energy, and I think NIO is a good company for that. Basically the China's Tesla, and that's how I see it. Another car company, but really in the traditional sense, is VW, Volkswagen, German, of course. I bought them because I think it needs a company that produces cheap cars or cheaper cars for everyone. Obviously, I don't think Tesla can serve everyone with their cars because they're going to be too expensive and they just don't have the capability yet to manufacture, I don't know, 10 million cars a year. And they probably will have in 10 years, but they don't have right now. And VW to me was the company, the car company that has the best aim at electric mobility out of Daimler and BMW and GM. And yeah, I really like their new CEO. And I think they're on a good path. And obviously they also have brands like Audi and Seat and Skoda, if you don't know. I think they're on a good track in terms of electric mobility, and they're also way ahead of many other old car companies, but they're obviously still far behind Tesla. And we were just speaking of Tesla. I really love Elon Musk and most things he does. Status here says HODL, inspired by the crypto term hold on for dear life. So I'm just holding and planning to do that very long term. And I think I don't really have to say much about Tesla anymore. They are obviously electric car company, and I think they have a huge technological advantage over basically everyone in the car industry currently. Yeah, maybe except for Rivian or Lucid, but they first have to come out with their first production car, and then we see. Okay. As I said in the beginning, there are going to be a lot of changes to this portfolio. I will substantially decrease the number of positions. If you want to follow along for that, I will post my decisions in the Telegram group. With that said, comment your thoughts on this video and this portfolio and the consideration I presented to you down below in the comment section. Thank you for watching, and if you want to know more about personal finance, please consider subscribing. That helps my channel to grow and keeps me going. And remember, just be lekker. Bye bye.